it's June. We're around Father's Day, and in our program, we're spending a few weeks talking about fatherhood and fathers. And just to extend a little bit what you were just describing, I can imagine there's a lot of fathers who think that their primary job is to make their kids do it right. That's why they are a father.
Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of kids might not, respond really ideally there. Unpack that a bit, and what can just kind of apply that framework to how we're thinking about what a father's role is. What is a father supposed to do? As a father, how would you grade your fathering? I'm Dr. Carol. Thank you for joining me on the program today. This month, we're highlighting fathers and fatherhood. It is right around the time of Father's Day, and shining the light on your fathering, how you do as a father. Sometimes that can be a bit uncomfortable, but it may just be life-changing for you and your family and your kids. We're talking about being a connected father today. My guest, Chad Hayenga, has over 25 years of experience in ministering to kids and families as a licensed marriage and family therapist, coach, speaker, podcaster. He has been married for over 25 years. They have 3 daughters together. Chad works with an organization, Connected Families. And today, I'm talking with Chad about what it means to be a father, some of the challenges there, and a paradigm that will potentially revolutionize your effectiveness as a father. Incredibly powerful mindset that can help you connect with your kids and actually accomplish as a father what in your heart you desire to do. Chad Hayenga. Well, Chad Hayenga, thank you so much for being here. I am looking forward to this conversation. Glad to have you on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dr. Carol.
You have been teaching families, parents for over 25 years. You are a father. Let's just start perhaps with letting our audience know a little bit about how you came to be where you are, and then the organization that you work with, Connected Families.
Yes. So I started out, my first job, my real first job out of college was working with at-risk teens. And so did that for about 10 years. Learned a lot about what doesn't work oftentimes in working with people who are really struggling and maybe are a little suspicious of adults. And then did that for a number of years, learned a lot too. The teens there just helped teach me a lot of street smarts and just some understanding about what it's like to be in their world. In the process, though, I got my master's in counseling psychology and my license as a marriage and family therapist. And so I started to practice therapy, mostly with kids and teens. I have taught a master's program class as well on counseling kids and adolescents. And so have some experience with that. But one of the things that was frustrating for me is that I felt like I was helping kids or teens cope with their parents.
Yes.
More than I was helping families. And I was like, oh, this is frustrating. And so I stopped doing that. I probably did the counseling and therapy for about 5 or 6 years. Our family took a year off. We went to Mexico and did a year-long service project in Mexico.
Wow.
And I've got 3 daughters. And so they were in high school and middle school and late elementary school. And we did that. And then my wife and I and our daughters came back. And I just started to do parent coaching with Connected Families and through the Connected Families parenting framework.
Yeah. Wow. Well, as I have come to know a little bit about Connected Families, I have been so impressed by their framework, which seems different than some of the, conventional wisdom, both in and out of the church. And just that understanding, I think, can probably be so helpful and refreshing for our listeners and viewers. So just briefly, if you would, that Connected Families framework.
Yeah, the Connected Families framework was developed by Jim and Lynn Jackson, the founders of Connected Families, back in 2002. And I've been with Connected Families since 2005. And we really talk about 4 messages that we want our kids to receive from us even in difficult situations or challenging behavioral situations. And those four messages that we talk about really are identity forming messages. The first one, child, you are safe with me. You're emotionally safe, you're physically safe, you're spiritually safe. And one question I ask myself and other parents is, can I be okay even if my child's behavior is not okay?
Yes.
Or do I need my child to behave a certain way in order for me to be okay? And that really starts to put a spotlight on really where my identity comes from and my value comes from. Is it from a well-behaved child, or is it settled issue in terms of who God says that I am? The second message is you're loved no matter what. And that really is, that Romans 5:8 kind of love where God demonstrates his love towards us while we were still sinners. Christ died for us. Misbehavior is a great opportunity to show our kids unconditional love. Yeah. And so our kids need to know you're loved no matter what.
Yep.
So empathy can be a powerful communicator of your love no matter what as well. And so those first two messages, you're safe and you're loved, we talk about as messages of grace. Our kids need a nest of grace to fall back into when they blow it or they're struggling. Yeah. And then the next two messages we talk about as messages of accountability. And so the third message, child, you're called and you're capable. You're called to be a blessing. You're capable of using your good gifts and talents to bless and honor others, to bring glory to God. And so we look through the lens of teaching and coaching our kids in using their gifts in honoring ways. And, it takes talent to misbehave. And so, even looking through the lens of what talent did it take to misbehave like that? And how can we actually use that talent for good and God's purposes? And then the fourth message, it's the one that most parents want to start with. And I know that I would like to as well, but we end with the fourth message of child, you're responsible for your actions. Yeah. And you're responsible for your life. And so we think through the lens of restoration. Like, do our consequences bring restoration? Do they build wisdom in our kids, or are they more punitive, like, I hope you hurt so bad you never do that again, sort of things, which are easy to fall into? So that's the framework at which we teach parenting at Connected Families.
It seems upside down from the way many parents perhaps were parented and may naturally try to go to, like you were saying, that many parents might naturally go, the first message, you're responsible, so I'm going to punish you, and your behavior is what's important. This framework turns it upside down, where your heart is what's most important.
Yes. Yeah. I think one of the unique things about Connected Families that maybe is a little different than some other parenting models is that we start asking the parent first, what's going on with them. So before getting to what am I going to do, we really ask the parents to consider what's going on with me. Wow. What am I believing about myself in this situation? What am I believing about my child? Because our beliefs and our thoughts really lead to feelings and actions. So what we believe and think is so important to determine how we're going to respond to a situation. So starting with us as parents first can be a little uncomfortable, because we're like, well, I'd rather just focus on what I think is the problem over here versus what's going on in here. But wow, the Lord just meets us there when we start looking at ourselves first before we move into what are we going to do with that issue.
I think we could probably spend a couple hours just talking about that. And there's so much Bible there, so much theology, the way Jesus and all, but the Bible, it's all there. That would be fruitful in itself. It's June. We're around Father's Day, and in our program, we're spending a few weeks talking about fatherhood and fathers. And just to extend a little bit what you were just describing, I can imagine there's a lot of fathers who think that their primary job is to make their kids do it right. That's why they are a father. Yes. And I'm sure a lot of kids might not, respond really ideally there. Unpack that a bit, and what can just kind of apply that framework to how we're thinking about what a father's role is. What is a father supposed to do? Yeah.
I grew up believing that my primary job was to make my kids behave well.
Yep.
And so, oh my goodness, that is a tiring job, right? It's a lot like playing maybe whack-a-mole, like knock it
Yep.
off, stop it, leave it alone, leave her alone, go to bed, stay in bed. And we just kind of keep after all of the behaviors, right? And you'll see in the framework that I talked about in those 4 messages that they're really about identity.
Yeah.
Growing an identity in our kids. And I'm sure you've seen this, but we walk out our identity every day. What we believe about ourselves is what we present. It's what comes
Yes.
out of us. And so for our kids as well, it's like we really want to. So I shifted that perspective of making my kids behave well.
Yeah.
And I would call that kind of managing behavior. So going from managing behavior to now mentoring belief.
Mm.
What do they believe about themselves?
Yeah.
What's true about them? And now moving away from the whack-a-mole parenting to the, wow, there's an identity that I'm growing here in this child. And what kind of identity do I want to continue to speak into this child? So making it less about behavior and more about belief was certainly a shift for me.
Yeah. I'm sure it is for many parents. And you've, alluded to that you had to be intentional to make that shift. You kind of alluded to that. And I'm sure there's many parents out there that they hear that and say, that sounds good, but I haven't seen any parenting that way. My parents didn't parent me that way. So the only way I know to do is whack-a-mole.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about parents' hearts here, and I love how you're focusing on that. How can a father in particular, since we're talking about fathers, kind of walk that journey to change the focus?
Yeah, great question. And I think you would expect at a organization called Connected Families that there would be a strong focus on connection. And so, I think that's a really good starting point.
Yeah.
Is how connected am I to this child? Like
Yes.
One of the first things I'll do when I'm coaching is I'll just try to gauge how connected, because a parent will come in and they'll say, well, we want this to change and this to change. We want this to get better. And it's usually oriented towards the child's behavior. And so a connection is really a currency. And if we are out of connection, our ability to guide and shape our kids' hearts is really limited. We tend to become controlling then, and our kids receive that as controlling. What I discovered is that I could, as a dad, through my facial expression, through my tone of voice, just my size standing over, I could get my kids to do the things that I wanted them to do for a season. Because I could get them what I thought it was obedience, like they were obeying me. And what it turned out, I think, is they were just more afraid of me, or afraid of afraid of the consequences. But then there's usually one child in a family who stands up to that. They're like, no, there might be a compliant child that we're thinking, wow, that child is really, really obedient. And then there's a kiddo that comes along, it's just like, right? And they kind of get after you a little bit. And that's the thing that I think causes us as dads to have to step back and say, okay, maybe I need to come at this a little bit differently, as opposed to trying to control behavior, work and engage with that child in connection. One just simple thing, I think that just trying to make things practical here.
Yes.
It's oftentimes not very natural for a dad to be empathetic.
Yes.
Mostly fixing, right?
Yes.
Hey, this is wrong. We need to fix this. Let me just tell you this information and then do it differently, right?
Yep.
I found that just one empathetic statement can change everything in the course of parenting and even in connection. So take this example. Your child is doing something. They're disappointed that they didn't get to go somewhere. And it's disappointment that's going on here. And as a parent, as a dad, I can look at that and I can just say, well, life's not fair, right? Or I just blurt these things out. It doesn't help the child. The child actually feels disconnected when I do that. But if I say, oh, buddy, you're disappointed, aren't you, that you weren't able to go? Okay, I can almost guarantee you that child will go, yeah, right? And
you can just feel, just as you say that, just kind of,
Yes.
Yes.
It's just a simple understanding, right? And as dads, we've all been disappointed that we didn't get something that we wanted right when we wanted it. Okay, I can understand what that's like. And if I can just bypass that initial reaction to go to give the right answer,
Yep.
And it's usually a good answer, it's usually a right answer, but it's not a helpful one.
Yes.
And our kids won't be able to receive our wisdom until they know that we are understanding them. And so just that little piece alone, I was like, oh, wow, you're disappointed. Oh, you scraped your knee. That must have really hurt.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to you're tough, get up. Right. It's
Right.
like
Right.
just that little shift, I think, is helpful for dads. And I've had lots of dads just say, oh my goodness, just one or two little statements like that just kind of melts the conflict. So
yeah. I know Connected Families right now, Chad, has a Fighting Siblings, a sibling conflict course available, and we'll put the link to that in the show notes. But maybe you can apply this for a second. A dad sees their two kids and they're fighting, and his natural response might be to, yell something like, cut it out, or go to your rooms, or something like that. What would this look like for a dad who has two of the kids fighting? What would it look like to apply this in that kind of setting?
Yeah. So first, one of the things that I'll encourage dads to do is to not be surprised by things that we know we're going to see. So I think that's the real shocker. It's like, when I ask parents, what are the 2 or 3 challenges you're going to face this week with your kids? They're able to tell me. And then it's like, okay, well, let's game plan that. Let's have a plan. We know what's going to happen, so we don't have to act surprised. So my first thought would be, okay, this is going to happen. It shouldn't take us by surprise. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong with us or our family. Conflict is normal, right? And so just trying to get into a mindset that says, this isn't a kind of that catastrophic thinking, like, oh my goodness, right? This is going to be awful. It's like, oh, here's an opportunity. So for me, coming into that situation, I'm also thinking that I want to teach my kids to be responsible for their own relationships. I'm not responsible for them getting along. I am responsible to teach them how to resolve conflict and what that looks like. But ultimately, I can't be responsible for their relationship. So I might come into that situation, and instead of going, what is going on here? Knock it off. You go to your room. Okay, that just comes so naturally to me because it's my default. But I might come in and I might go, whoa, hey, wait a second here. Hey, wow, there's some big words being said here. Right? Again, I'm making an observation. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Even though there's oftentimes one child that kind of has a history that would suggest that they might be the instigator here.
Right.
Okay, but I'm not coming in with the finger pointing. I'm coming in trying to just maybe be loud enough so they look at me. If I come in really soft, like, hey, what's going on? Right? They're not going to hear any of that. So there's some big stuff going on. And my first focus here is on getting them to calm down, because nobody's going to solve a problem when they're angry, not in any beneficial or helpful ways. And so we talk about these 4 steps to the peace process in our sibling conflict course, right? So calm down is number 1, and then understand each other. All right. So once you're calm, hey, what's your story? Hey, what's your story? Okay. Hear each other, speak it back to each other, right? And then solve the problem. Okay. The third part of that, just solve the problem. Okay. So what would be good for you and good for me? And now we're talking about negotiation. We're talking about compromising and working together. And then the 4th step is celebrate. So, and that's a big one, right? We just want to celebrate. You have resolved a conflict, and that's a big deal. And when we teach our kids how to resolve conflict, we're sending kids out into the world who can be peacemakers, who can help other people resolve conflict. So anyway, that's a really brief snapshot of what that might look like, but
that's great. And what I hear that you're illustrating is you as a parent helping your kids prepare to be future adults.
Yes.
And there's things that they learn. Sometimes I do a lot of work with husbands and wives, and I so often end up getting them to talk about, you learned about feelings and communication and conflict and anger and sad. You learned about those things before you knew you were learning about it. Yes. And so here we're talking about that a father's role can help their kids learn to be a human, a better human. This is lessons in learning to be human. And that's what a father is
Yes.
doing with his kids.
Absolutely. And I think when we can come in with people who are going to help our kids grow and learn, that mindset
Yeah.
of growth and skill building. I think one of the things that I see with lots of parents and dads in particular is that, and I mentioned this earlier, we're just quick to throw something out there. Like, don't argue, don't fight, leave it alone. And then maybe a threat that comes behind that. And if you keep doing that, then this bad thing is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Okay, and I look at that and I think, okay, they're lacking a skill, and telling them to knock it off, leave it alone, stop that, doesn't teach a new skill.
Right.
Right. So if we want them to grow in a different skill, we're going to have to be a little thoughtful about how we teach that skill. And so one of the things that I'll oftentimes invite parents into thinking is like, where do you want things to be 2 to 3 months from now? Like, I'm not coaching you for tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll have the same kids you have today, likely, right? But if you do things differently and intentionally between now and just over time, the next 2 or 3 months from now, this could look very different.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important reminder that it actually requires us to be intentional about teaching the skills that we would like them to grow in. So if you want to teach self-control, telling kids to have more self-control isn't going to help them have more self-control. Right? So I think that how do we teach that? How have we learned that as parents? And then how can we model and then teach our kids those things as well?
Yeah. As you're talking about this, I can imagine many parents might be feeling, well, I don't know that myself. When you see your kids acting out, if you have a half a mind open to see it, you see reflections of you. And that's not always such a pretty picture. You're not seeing the mirror that you would like to see, yes. Yourself in the mirror that you would like to see. So just as I hear you talking about that, this calls parents, dads in particular, since we're talking about them, to step up. Yes. And that's a challenge. That's not comfortable. You've alluded to that, but this is something parents have to grow in.
Yes, it's really hard to imagine that our kids are going to exhibit certain behaviors or characteristics or skills if we aren't modeling those for them. And, it's not a shame thing. So it's not like, oh man, I'm so bad or I'm so wrong, but it is a humility thing, right? Where we're like, hey, maybe there are some areas where I need to grow. And instead of looking at my kids and saying they need to grow in these areas, I need to just take a quick look and a little bit of an inventory on where I'm at. And, one of the things that I think is important in parenting, and dads in particular, is being authentic, right? That there's just a level of authenticity. And I don't know about you, but I would imagine a child who hears a dad say, I've kind of been after you about how you've been, not cleaning up after yourself.
Yeah.
And I've kind of even been harsh a little bit or giving you consequences for that. And you know what? There are times where I don't do that very well either. And I bet you've noticed, and your kids will say, yeah, right. And then you need to take a breath and swallow, right? It's like, yeah. And so I want to own that for myself and just say, hey, I want to get better at that. And I think we can both grow in our ability to take care of our things a little bit better, or we can both grow in kindness, or we can both grow in self-control. And so I'm learning some things here as well. And I think when our kids see that, it just raises the level of respect for a parent when the parent actually says what the kid already knows, but nobody's saying. Or maybe the child even gets in trouble for saying it, right? Because it's like, well, Dad, you don't do this. And then so you don't talk to me like that. And it's kind of our own self-protective place that we run into. But I do think that level of authenticity is just so important for our kids as we try to model the best we can, but we're also able to say, hey, I don't get it right all the time. And that's okay. We're growing, we're learning together, and we're going to continue to grow as we pray about it, as we work together here. So it feels a little bit, that's a little scary place, I think, for dads to go, because I think dads might feel like I'm losing respect when I actually think you're gaining respect.
Yes. And talking about respect and dads, um, our relationship with God, Jesus' favorite moniker for God was his heavenly Father, told
Yeah.
us to think of him as Father.
Mhm.
Let's apply this to relationship with God. I think probably everyone who's listening or watching us believes that relationship with God is primary in our lives, and we want that for our kids. Talk for a minute about how fathering impacts, first of all, our own sense of God, and then how we father impacting parent fathering impacts our children's concept of God.
Yeah. So, our first view of God was likely our parents, like how what we believed about God, what we understood about God came from our parents.
Yeah.
Some of what they said, but mostly of what they modeled.
Yes.
And so that was something that I learned, and I'm guessing that you did, and most of us have imperfect parents, imperfect fathers, right? We only have one perfect father, and he's in heaven. And so we all kind of walk through life learning about God, though, through what our parents modeled for us. And if it's rule based, then God has really got a high bar, and I never measure up, and I've got to keep measuring up, but I never quite get there. If that was the example, or if that's what we saw, then we're just going to see God as somebody who's sitting there in his chair, kind of checking things off, going, no, you were so close, but you didn't quite get it. And we kind of miss the God of grace. And we have to have that grace in our life. It's really important for us to receive God's grace for ourselves, so we can pass it on to our kids as well. And so I think that what we dealing with our own father wounds, our own parent wounds, is so important. I always think about just trying to give my parents a break, right? They were doing the best they knew how. And I think most parents, I wouldn't say every parent, but I think most parents were just doing the best that they knew how. Right. And so there's kind of that reconciliation, that forgiveness for that. And then looking to God the Father is the only one who can really heal those wounds, who parents us perfectly. And so it puts a lot of pressure. I think we can feel a lot of pressure, where it's like, oh my goodness, well, I've been such a poor representative, or I don't know. And there's one verse that I just want to highlight, or a couple verses in 1 Thessalonians, that were just so refreshing to me and kind of gave me a different picture, perhaps. And it's 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 8 says this. It said, because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. And so that talks to me a lot about authenticity. It's like, hey, we're just living life here as we go. Deuteronomy 6, we're just walking life, and we're sharing the gospel with our kids all along. And then verses 11 and 12, the Apostle Paul says this, and this really piqued my interest when he says, for you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children. Oh. And I was like, what? Oh. Paul's going to talk to me about how a father deals with his own children. Oh, wow. And then he has 3 words. He says, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory. And so I think that's such a helpful framing for me. Paul says, I dealt with you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you. Yes. Right. Yes. And so even looking through the lens of that as a father, it's like, was I encouraging today? Like, did I put courage into my kids today? Yeah. Like comforting them, you know, and did I urge them to come on, keep moving, step it up, right? You can do this, that capacity, that capability piece that we talk about through the Connected Families framework as well. So those are just a few thoughts, but that verse, I loved it. It just jumped out. It's like, I dealt with you as a father deals with his own children.
That is beautiful, Chad. I can feel my heart being just stirred with that. And I'm not a father, but just that whole paradigm and idea. As we draw this conversation near an end, can maybe you just speak to fathers who feel like I've really messed up? I haven't been treating my children that way. I've been treating them, trying to make them behave right.
Yeah.
I haven't been encouraging and lifting them up and urging them. Um, maybe you just speak a moment of encouragement to those dads.
Yeah, if that's a spot that you find yourself in, I would say that's a potential holy moment right there. It's
Yes.
just recognizing I haven't done it the way that I've wanted to do it, and we have a God of grace and mercy who loves and turns ashes into beauty, right? And takes the messes of our life, and he is somebody that can take those things and rebuild things for his own purposes and his own glory. And so I would just encourage dads that there's that humility word again.
Yes.
It's like most dads that would come to their kids and say, look, I don't think I've done this as well as I'd like, and I have messed up and I have blown it. Not groveling. I'm not talking about I'm the worst dad ever and you deserve
Right.
so much better than me. That's a
Right.
different thing. That is not helpful. But
Right.
when we just come and say, hey, look, I want to get better. I want to do this better. And I don't think I've done it as well as I could. And I'm going to mess up again. But I just want to say that, hey, I want to come at this a little bit differently. And I'm going to be doing some work on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our kids will just look at that and go, oh, wow, what an example.
Yes.
Right. When we see an adult, and our kids all think that we're ancient, right? So they see this ancient person who's actually working at improving and doing things differently. Oh my goodness, what a model for our kids. We're never done. We're
Yes.
always able to grow. God's always able to redeem. And so if there's a dad out there who's just feeling like I've just blown it beyond repair, remember the God that you know.
Yes.
There
Yes.
is no beyond repair,
Yes.
right? So
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, we're going to make sure the links are available to people to find out more about connected families and all of that. But yeah, maybe just a final, just invite people to come, join you and connected
yeah.
families, the all the good stuff that you do.
Yeah. So connectedfamilies.org is where you can find our home base. And we've got 5 online courses. And you mentioned the sibling conflict course. And so we've got a few other courses. We've got our own podcast as well. You can find us on other, on your podcast platform, Connected Families Podcast. But the best way to really kind of dip your toe into the Connected Families pool is we have a newsletter that we send out, parenting tips once a week. We work hard in our content to just be an encouragement to parents. You can look at our blog. We probably have about 350 or so articles on there. You can search your topic to kind of see what we might, how we might talk about that particular challenge that you might be facing. But just know that you're not alone. There are people like you, Dr. Carol, and us at Connected Families and others who just want to support and encourage healthy parents and healthy families.
Mm. Thank you so much. So rich and so encouraging. God bless you, your family, and Connected Families. It's been wonderful to have you on our program today.
Thank you, Dr. Carol. I appreciate the invite.
Well, if you're like me, you found your heart stirred just in that 30-minute conversation. Whether you're a father right now or not, just that the idea of what a difference a father can make, what a difference connecting rather than trying to control can make. I think that goes for any relationship, but none perhaps more important than between a parent and a child. I would encourage you to check out Connected Families. Me, Dr. Carol, I'm asking you, if you are a parent at any life stage, connectedfamilies.org. And right now, this month, for the month of June, the Sibling Conflict online course, they are running a special on. If you are seeing your kids just fight and bicker, and like I was talking with Chad about in this conversation, you're yelling at them, trying to make them behave and not fight. This can totally revolutionize the way your kids experience each other. It's something you can learn quickly and something you can teach your kids easily. The Sibling Conflict online course from Connected Families. And right now they have a special that's a pay what you can. Normally the course is $28. Right now it's pay as you can if you get it before the month of June ends. Do check out that link. It's underneath this video. I know you will find it helpful. I want to thank you for being part of our family here online. I would love you to subscribe to our channel. Subscribe to the Dr. Carol Ministries channel so you can see any video that we put out. We show up here weekly, and I would love to hear from you anytime. But subscribe and then leave a note under this video, leave a comment. If you'd like to connect with me confidentially, you can use the contact page on our website, and you'll find the link under this video as well. And the contact page is confidential. It comes only to me, and I respond personally, and I would love to hear from you. And until next time, may God bless you.